Hey y'all, welcome to Healthy with Heather Brown. If you don't know where to start with balancing being healthy and loving the life you already have, I got you, friend. And yes, of course, we're still going to enjoy some Chick-fil-A. I'm here to come alongside you and encourage you to fall more in love with your creator, your spouse, your kids, and your own health journey. We'll talk about how to let your good things grow until they become daily habits, with the occasional dad joke and point of view from my Yankee hubby, Eric. Don't stress. Let's hop on this Hot Mess Express together. So join me, Heather Brown, as we unpack what it looks like to live a life well loved. Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited to have you here. And today is a little bit different because I actually did this interview before I even knew that I was going to have a podcast and for sure when. So it's a little bit out of the ordinary, but I'm excited to give you a sneak peek and a glimpse into somebody that's very interwoven within my health. This is Dr. John that I will be talking to today. And for those of you that have been around for a while, I started going to him when I was pregnant with baby Finn, and Finn is now 3, almost 4, and wow. So Dr. John and I really have a lot of history. We started out just with him being my chiropractor, adjusting me, but as time has evolved and everything has changed within his practice, I have really enjoyed getting to up-level my health and fitness and all the things awareness. And I credit him in large part to that. I have been astounded by the health resource that he has been for me. And if you're local to Birmingham, he is based in Homewood, Alabama. And I just can't say enough good things about him. If you have anything going on with your health, be it from struggling with diabetes to back pain to neck issues to infertility. I mean, you name it, he really does kind of help address the blueprint of the human body. And one of the things that we connect with and have the most in common on, I would say, is intermittent fasting. So I asked him to get really nerdy with me about intermittent fasting, and I actually put it in the blog. It was so much information that even I, who have been intermittent fasting now for over 3 years because of my fast rated fat loss program, I even learned so much from him. So I know you're going to buckle up and fall in love with the concept of intermittent fasting. And I would highly encourage you, even if you think that it's not for you, trust me, wink, wink, I think that you can get on board with this. If you have even considered it, if you have heard about the health benefits but weren't sure how to work it, listen to this man blow your mind with what all it can do for you truly. And I will link the blog post that I have written about intermittent fasting down in the show notes for you at the bottom. So here we go. Deep dive with me and Dr. John on intermittent fasting. Dr. John, first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about Archetype Health and tell me a little bit about what you've seen from a foundational standpoint about how intermittent fasting has played into your practice, if it has at all.
Yeah, intermittent fasting I would say it is a significant part of the practice, and mainly the blood analysis portion or the nutritional portion. But before I get to that, Archetype is built around ancestral human living in a modern environment. So that's why I named it Archetype. So Archetype is meant for us to have the practices of our ancestors in our modern environment. What I mean by modern environment is the human is existing in a very unnatural environment. So we still have to do those things that our ancestors did in a very segregated environment. So our diet is separate, our movement is separate, our healthcare is separate, our searching for food is separate. Everything was integrated back in our ancestral days. Do I want to go back to that? No, I don't. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that we integrate those practices in modern day environment so we can live the best version of our lives that we're meant to live.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes.
So fasting. So fasting, it is just as natural to the human as breathing is. So, and that's a lot of people that would say, oh, that's a huge statement. Absolutely, it's a huge statement because we would we would fast out of need because we were looking for food in our ancestral days, but we are doing none of that in our modern day. Or people that are considered, I don't know, weirdos, or people that are like, oh, it's as a dietary form, but it's not a dietary thing. It is something that is just as natural as breathing. So I wrote a post yesterday on Instagram that said that fasting is as important to our long-term health as breathing is to our short-term health.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because fasting, what it does is it allows you to stabilize glucose, the utilization or use of glucose, the utilization of fat, ketosis, detoxification. It allows your organ systems to repair. So I could keep going with like the benefits of it. So
yes,
a lot of people use it as a daily thing that you should be doing daily, but that's wrong. You should be using it as a ancestral human would use it as the means to look for food. And then you eat clean foods, and then you have food for a portion of time, then you fast again because that would mimic you going to look for food.
Yes.
So I would say it's crucial in our healthcare system that we teach people, which is a natural healthcare method. We don't have anything that would be unnatural to the body, or that we inject into the body, or we give that man-made things are being put into the body. We want to do everything as natural as possible. So we have a natural living ethos that surrounds archetype, that really is archetype.
Yes.
So it's a significant impact in everyone that at least does the nutritional portion of archetype's care, natural health care.
So for my followers that have no idea what we even mean when we say fasting, what does that mean in general? And how do you think that you almost tailor it towards your clients? Because I know a lot of people say it's fasting for 16 hours. You have a feeding window of 8. But now what you're saying is you would rather people not do it every day. So explain that a little bit.
So the reason you wouldn't do it every day is it would mimic... well, first off, I'm going to go back to the physiology. Like, you have to go back to science of why and what you're doing. Is the first roughly 18 to 20 hours, your utilization of energy is glucose. So the things that you put into your body. So past 20 hours, your utilization is fat. So you're literally using your body's fat to use it for energy. And so most people don't get to that 20-hour mark. And if you don't ever get to that 20-hour mark, then you're literally training your body. If you're just eating daily and you're not fasting, you are training your body to receive food on a regular basis and be dependent on that food. But what ends up happening, that's very unnatural. And so you burn out your use of insulin, you burn out the use of glucose being broken down into the system because it's working 100% of the time. There's no rest for it. So there's no repair for it. So it's literally like driving your car from New York to LA at 110 miles per hour the whole way, not taking any breaks. That wouldn't be possible. But eventually the wheels would come off. The body would the car would break down. We were meant to fast. We did it for 99.5% of our human existence, but in the 0.5%, we've have these new things that always give us food, being modern diet, modern food things. And so we're putting it into our body consistently. And so that is that first glucose pathway. So that first glucose pathway is that you're teaching your body that it is always going to have food given to it. So if you go past 20 hours of fasting, then you're teaching your body that it has to rely on itself to retrieve energy so it can exist, it can repair, it can do all the things that we're meant to do. Is that?
Well, you're actually making me think of a phrase that Eric says to our boys all the time when they're wrestling or we're messing around with each other or whatever. And they'll say, help me, daddy, help me, mommy. And Eric will always say to them, you have to learn to help yourself.
Of course.
And that is so true in health as well. Like, as you were saying that, I was like, yeah, because you look at anything that we were taught as kids growing up, and it was like, well, you have to eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. You have to research. You have to kind of like dig in and learn what works well for your body. And for some people that are like, I don't even know how to do fasting for 20 hours, let alone more than 20 hours. How do you get started?
Yeah, a lot of the times people, when they first do it, it will not be a good experience because you're literally cranking up an old engine that has not been used. So
that's a good analogy.
So a lot of the times when people fast for the first time, or probably the first few times, they're like, I don't want to do that. I got lightheaded. I got a headache. I got caffeine withdrawals. I had whatever version of that not so fun situation. They're like, why would they want more stress when all of us as Americans or modern culture, we have a lot going on. So we're already stressed.
Right.
And it's just part of like the rate of communication and it being so fast, and like adding another stressor into that person's environment is like, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. That hurts. I don't like it. We're naturally supposed to avoid pain.
Right.
But what it will do, it will actually, if you start fasting on a semi-regular basis, like 2-3 times a week, I would suggest 2 to begin with. But what that will start doing is it will give your body a rest. And typically I will say to someone that's starting out is I would say pick for 6 months. And 6 months sounds like a lot, but it's not. Take 2 days. So my 2 days that I fast for 18 hours is Wednesday and Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's random enough to where that would mimic me looking for food if I was ancestral John.
So you're not trying to do back-to-back days. You're trying to do separated days throughout the week. Okay.
You want to do separate because that would mimic a randomness within your existence.
Okay.
So if you did, every now and then you could do like, as long as it's random. It should never be a pattern thing, because the one thing that the body thinks that's happening is if you're doing it every day is that you're literally conditioning your body to be even more dependent on glucose, and it will store, if you don't go over 18 hours, you will store what you get through glucose in fat. And when you don't use that fat because you're never going over a 20-hour fast, then you will then be essentially holding on to fat. And then when you were to stop that pattern, that everyday pattern, you would actually end up accumulating more fat because your body thinks that it's going to be in another starvation phase every day. And like that pattern is not good.
Yikes.
And so just as with everything in our culture, like the dietary, the fad dietary thing that people do is that this is just a microcosm in all of the diets that have ever existed, and it's going to pass. But this is one thing that we have to always remember is like, how did our ancestors do it? Always keep that in mind, is like, did I have access to this as an ancestral human, and am I doing whatever thing that is in the version that they had access to, or as close to it as possible?
Yeah. Interesting.
If that makes sense.
It does. I was thinking about, you were talking with another client while I was getting adjusted downstairs last week, and you asked somebody what kind of diabetes they had, and or a husband, I think, of a client.
Yep.
And you said, I think they should come see me. I think we could talk about that. Does that have something to do with intermittent fasting? And can you explain that a little bit? Because I thought that was fascinating, even just hearing you say that. I thought I knew where you were going, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, that's exactly where I was going. So type 1 diabetes, people are born with the inability to break down glucose, and we can get into that later. But intermittent fasting for type 1 diabetics, that is a whole nother discussion. So type 2 diabetics is that the body has essentially lost its ability to utilize insulin. So that's something called insulin resistance. A massive insulin resistance is type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes essentially forms if you're eating foods every day and you're just pounding the body with like glucose and sugar, not necessarily sugar. When I say, that's another thing I like to clarify, is like glucose does not necessarily mean that I'm eating sugar. It just means energy that is broken down to the molecular form that is utilized in the body.
Okay.
So type 2 diabetes is mainly whenever the body loses its ability to use insulin. So insulin is what retrieves glucose. And so that is what makes that mechanism then be taken into the cell and be utilized. Now, there's some caveats around that, which I'll have to get into later. But the thing that people need to understand is like, if we consistently are eating without fasting it burns out the insulin's ability and the receptor for the insulin to actually work. So what ends up happening is when you eat something, it overproduces insulin, whatever is not used or could not be used because the mechanism isn't working. That turns into inflammation, then it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it turns into type 2 diabetes, where people can no longer utilize glucose the way that we are meant to, because they're eating consistently, they're ramping up glucose and insulin levels, which causes inflammation and causes liver issues, and it just keeps going.
A host of issues.
I would say they have a saying that type 3 diabetes is brain disease.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
So if you think about it, like if you want a neuron to work, because that's ultimately the goal of like our existence is brain function. So glucose and oxygenation are the two most important things that you can do to change that physiology so it will work optimally. So if you inhibit energy sources, then it's going to harm that neuron, which is your brain.
Okay.
And so if you harm, another topic would be great to talk about is like oxygenation. Like, how does your body deal with oxygen? If you don't breathe and you don't use oxygen the way that you were meant to, you will have just as much dysfunction as if your glucose or your blood sugar was disrupted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Well, and it's also, to me, as a believer, I can't help but think like, this is so cool that like, as God exists and he created all of us, like how beautifully he set it up and how far like sin nature and gluttony and all these things that are like larger at play have messed us up.
The design is perfect.
Yeah.
It is really cool. And so why the design is perfect is like we were meant to walk 18,000 steps a day.
Mind-blowing in our culture.
That's what our ancestors did. And so we are set up on that template. And so think about it. Like, we're talking about glucose and stability for what our ancestors did. And that's what fasting is. Like, it is built around all of that history of the human and how did we operate then. And so that's why I was saying that you're taking an ancestor of our past and putting them in modern society. That is us.
Yeah.
And so we have to follow those dietary habits the way they did, but we have access to everything.
Yes.
We have packets of energy. Being processed foods, and like we just keep ramping up our blood sugar, ramping up our insulin. So that's why it becomes a problem.
That completely makes sense.
Let's get real for a second. If there's one thing the last 2 years have taught me, it's how important a close accountability circle is. In 2020, some of my small group and gym friends, you probably often see on my Instagram actually, started our own little mama village to keep each other going during that crazy, work out together, and to pray for each other. I really treasure the encouragement and accountability that comes from that. And I've gotten several DMs asking if I offer any type of coaching, and I heard you. I am so excited to offer, hey, drumroll please, live coaching and daily encouragement and accountability for the first time ever. This September, you can join me in a challenge I'm calling the September Slim Down. For 2 weeks, you'll be able to join an exclusive, intimate Facebook group. I'll be there every day for those 2 weeks, offering personal coaching, daily check-ins, personal advice, and more. We'll focus on drinking more water, eating better, and getting our steps in as we fall back into fitness and our healthy habits. It sounds simple, and truly, that's because it is. Sometimes all you need is a little accountability and motivation, and that's the goal of this group. And I really want us to have fun together too, if I'm being honest. I'll also share the tips and lessons that motivate me, teach you how to have a food diary, and crack the code on macros. All the things. Don't worry if you'll feel overwhelmed though. We'll be doing it together. All that matters is that you just show up. And sometimes that's the hardest part. As a bonus, you'll receive one of my ebooks, Meal Planning for the Busy Mom, a complete guide, for free might I add. Don't wait to grab your spot. We start on September 12th, and that's when signups close. The link will be in the show notes of this episode, and feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at healthywithheatherbrown if you have any questions at all. I'm happy to talk with you through them. I can't wait to be a part of your health journey and to develop deeper relationships with y'all. So let's get it, girls.
I do want to ask you, the next thing I have is, what is the number one reason you do intermittent fasting, number one, and you probably kind of already spoken to this. And number two, that's one of the first things that you and my trainer recommended after I had a baby, was starting to do intermittent fasting, even in the beneficiary of losing weight. How do you envision intermittent fasting, number one, affecting you the best? Like, what, I guess, tangible way do you see it affect you? And what's the number one best way you think it can affect women and moms?
For, I would say, humans, period, it's decreasing inflammation.
Okay, good.
So if you decrease inflammation, like, you increase your ability to repair.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially what you're doing is when we eat 3 meals a day, when we eat snacks on top of that, we have the ability to have a higher rate of inflammation. So the definition of health on a cellular level is how fast are your cells dividing compared to how fast are they dying off.
Mm.
So if they're dying off faster because there's a high rate of inflammation, that is injury in like a very small amount of cell death. That doesn't mean you're dying. That just means that that mechanism is winning. You're either moving towards health or death. Like,
or away, yeah.
Yeah, you're, and I don't mean that in like a morbid sense, but it's actually pretty awesome in the sense of, like, if you're not pouring into your health, you're literally trending towards death. And that, I mean, you have depending on where you are, hopefully you have a long way to go.
Right.
If you don't, think about, like, then if that person has like heart issue, or just had a baby, or just ran a marathon, or is training really hard, not sleeping really well, you add a stressor. And so the reason why you intermittent fast is so that you can dampen as much inflammation as you can, being proactive, and then allowing repair and that innate intelligence, that beautiful intelligence that heals our body, to do its job and repair itself.
I love that. That's a really good answer. I'm like, man, yes. I'm like, who doesn't want to intermittent fast now? Come on. Dr. John, why do you recommend doing a 24-hour fast, and how often? You've said 24 hours plus, and I know you and I have talked about this off interview, but explain to the followers why you might do that.
So a lot of the time, this is really cool, is that, think about, like, people are always trying to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So losing weight typically has to do with fat, right?
Right.
So there's a lot more to it, but if you just took that concept, if you never trained your body to use fat, why would it know how to lose fat?
Mm.
So it has to be able to use it to lose it. Like, you can't your body has to understand, like, after 20 hours is when we tap into that ketosis, that fat burning model. If we never get to the point to where we are utilizing that fat energy system, then there's no way that your body is going to accurately understand how to utilize fat. So how are you really going to fix that issue of weight gain, of that dysfunction of the usage of fat? And so my point is after 20 hours, it can happen, but at 18, if you've exercised within that 18 hours of that fasting.
We're going to talk about that next.
Okay. So if you get past 20 hours, then what you're doing is you're essentially teaching your body how to tap into that energy system and turn on that energy system a lot easier. So it turns on a lot easier, and then you get a greater benefit when you keep visiting that fat burning stage. Like, it truly is a learned process. So I recommend that people do it. Gosh, you can do 24 hours. If you did just 24 hours, you could probably do it once a week. And that's a variant. I would suggest getting used to using that 18-hour fast first. Yeah. And so then jumping into a little bit longer after you've been doing that a period of time where you feel comfortable. But like anything over 20 hours, you're getting into ketosis. So 20 hours plus, and that can go up to 3 days. I recommend you getting help to go that long, or really anything past 48, you need to have guidance. A really good app is that Zero app.
Okay.
I think it's Dr. Atai. It's ATIA or I, and he's a medical doctor.
Okay.
He built the app. It's Zero app on the App Store.
Cool.
It's educational. If you pay for like the $7 a month, like it's awesome.
Okay, I'll check that out. I'll link it in the show notes too.
It's taught me a lot.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about a little bit more in depth about the 24-hour fast, which honestly, I might just make this whole separate post at this point. But the 24-hour fast, when I did it, I made sure on your recommendation that it was my busiest day of the week. So I didn't have time to think about how hungry I was. I actually was shocked how easily I did it. It was like no big deal. I drank tea throughout the day. I drank a ton of water throughout the day. Talk to people about when they first start intermittent fasting. What do you recommend that they eat pre-fast and recover post-fast so that it doesn't wreck their system? And like I had really low energy the next day.
After the 24-hour
fast?
So I would think if you're doing, typically, it's a loaded question.
We can come back to that in a whole other one.
No, I think I can give you a short answer.
Okay.
So if you're doing a shorter fast, you don't have to be as targeted to what you're eating pre-fast. It is good if you eat fats, if you eat things that you essentially would have access to. Mm-hmm. Things that essentially don't spike your glucose. So if you ate like cereal, like let's give someone Lucky Charms before they did a fast,
right.
They would have a horrible time, because what ends up happening is your blood sugar, it's going to peak and valley a lot. And something like, let's say I drank a Slurpee or something, it would destroy my glucose stability, and it would make that fast really freaking hard.
Yeah.
So if you keep things that are going to be like fats, like quality fats, protein, things that aren't going to take a high level of enzymatic activity. So enzymatic activity being like, how complex is that thing to break down, and how many different ingredients are in the thing that you ate? Mm-hmm. So if you're eating something that's highly processed, you can have like 200 ingredients in it, or 75 ingredients. So you want to keep it down to like 1 to, I'd say below 5 ingredients. So that just makes it easier for your body to not disrupt that glucose stability. So when you don't disrupt that glucose stability, then you're going to have a better ability to have a easier fast, essentially.
Okay.
So at the beginning, though, of that journey, for a beginner, you're balancing you're creating a better bandwidth. So you're at the beginning of that journey. It's going to be a little harder at the beginning. That's why getting a headache. That's why some negative things that could come out of beginning that journey of fasting. And that goes for when you first start fasting, period. And then when you first start getting into that 20+ hour fast, that you start utilizing that other system, and it can be a little dicey there too until you do it a few times, and then it gets a lot easier. Did I answer your question? You
did, but what about post-fast?
So post-fast is the same thing. So you want to make sure that you don't go eat a box of cookies, or you're going to want to, because your brain's going, I want energy now.
Yeah.
And so what's also really interesting to listen to yourself about is like, pay attention to the psychology of what you're craving when you're craving it. Because at first you're going to think about food more than you've thought about anything else in your life. You feel like you're going to be like, I've thought about food at least 80 times today.
Sure.
And so that's why I say keep your day busy.
Yeah.
Because if you're just chilling around your house, you're going to end up binge eating like something.
No doubt.
So that's going to be really difficult if you don't have like a busy day ahead of yourself.
Yes.
Because you'll get through the end of the day, I imagine you did.
Yeah.
Is you got through the end of your day and be like, whoa, that wasn't that bad.
It really wasn't. It really, really wasn't. And I would even say from a personal standpoint, when I fast for the first time for 24 hours, I ate dinner at like 5, and then I fasted for 24 hours and I got to eat dinner the next day. Right. And so I felt like I wasn't having a whole day end to end where I didn't eat. That would be really hard mentally.
You know what's really amazing though is to overcome those challenges. And when you when you don't eat and you essentially sleep on a long fast, you sleep like the dead. It is awesome.
Like I could see that.
And I've stopped wearing my my watches and things like that because I'm on a tinfoil hat, John, kind of like
cool.
So I'm trying to get away from as much EMF stuff as possible, but since I've been doing my long fast, I have not been wearing like my Garmin's or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But I imagine you're hitting more of your sleep waves and repairing at a higher rate. You're getting better quality of sleep. But you go to sleep in the one spot, you don't wake up. It's one of those sleeps where you just don't move. It's
okay. Awesome. Well, I'm going to have to try it then. That's going to have to happen. Yeah. Last pointed question was, I'd love to hear your take on fasted workouts versus non-fasted workouts. Do you notice any benefits or difference between the two? And that's when I say I fast, that's one of the number one concerns people come to me. Well, then how do you work out? I do, and I'm just used to it. But what does that look like in the beginning for people?
I mean, you'll get on a fasted 18-hour workout, like your body knows what to do. But think about this. So going back to health, what is health? Health is adaptability. Health is the ability for your body to understand an environment, adapt to that environment, and then adapt back to your normal everyday environment. So all you're doing is you're adding in a heightened adaptability in the sense of like you're requiring your body to adapt to more, but then you're adapting back. So what I just said, I guess I could say it more clear, is that working out is adaptability. It's no different than getting in a steam room, getting in a cold bath, getting sick and recovering. It is so your body essentially has a bandwidth of the ability to deal with stressors. All that you're doing is you're electively teaching your body to deal with stressors and then recovering from those stressors. That's all health is. Like how wide is your bandwidth? Because someone that's sick is going to have a very narrow bandwidth. Mm-hmm. Someone that is healthy is going to have a significant ability to adapt to many different stressors of all kinds and then adapt back to their level of health.
Sure.
So all that you're doing when you work out on a fast is, number one, you're requiring that your body do what our ancestors did. I always go back to that. But you're also requiring your body to adapt in a higher state of stress and to retrieve its own energy in an adapted state of stress. So what I mean by that is, imagine this, is that no one's going to give you a power bar before ancestral human is hunting a rabbit with its hands.
Right.
Like you either are going to perform and get that rabbit and eat it, or you're going to find berries, or no one's just going to give you energy to be able to then. So you are actually built to work out on a fasted state, and then your reward was glucose. It was whatever you had caught or whatever you found.
Yeah, such a cool way to look at it.
It's the way, like if you want to bring that divine and that perfect model, is like you were built perfectly, but we have to keep into consideration what we and how we were built. Like we did evolve to a certain point. Like evolution just means, I'm not talking about like Darwinism. I'm just talking about that we have to look back at what our ancestors did, and we have to mimic that to a point to where it makes sense in our environment, to where we can put a science to it and then do it even better, essentially.
And I think that what has been eye-opening for me in the past couple of years, and Dr. John and I have talked about this, is that our culture and our people that make money in this culture, it's a diet culture. It's trying to sell us all these drugs and enhancements and all these things. But it's like, at the end of the day, just go back to what God designed us to do and what we had access to. Don't go on binge diets. Don't go crazy and think that you need.
Like, don't do HCG. I mean, it's crazy. Like, you always have that reference point. You always have that reference point of like, did my ancestors have access to this? That helps me more than anything else in my life. Is like, if I'm taking something, would I be able to accumulate it? And think about this, is like why bread is so bad for us. And this is that to make that bread, it would be physically impossible. The way we have it today, it would be physically impossible for that human to gather that much wheat, to grind it that fine, to bake it that way, to emulsify it with all the things that this just would be impossible. So bread.
You're fine.
So being able to always put things into perspective, no matter what you're doing, whether it's fasting, whether it's, doesn't matter. Always put it into perspective. Like, would I have access to this as an ancestral human?
Absolutely. Well, that kind of wraps up all the questions I had about intermittent fasting. But Dr. John, is there anything else you'd like to add as far as what Archetype does, how it can help people. Any last words, I guess, about intermittent fasting you want anybody to know?
We are, a lot of the times, a lot of people will ask us, like, why do you do what you do? And it's more so just to get people to get their quality of life back. Or enhance their quality of life. And not necessarily that someone's broken, they come in and we fix them, but it's more so like, hey, if I'm working well, how do I make my life better? Like, the human body is the human body. A lot of the times when we go to other professionals, they want to get into these specific things of like hormone replacement or put you on drugs, and where you just needed to really go back to the basics. And so if I could say one thing about, if you want to change your health, like, you have to be able to understand the basics really well. And I would say that's what we do really well here, is like getting back to the basics. And I would always like to call myself a generalist. Like, I'm going to get and understand the basics first, then we're going to get to the specifics. So I would say most of the times when we have clients come in, it is that we have to teach them that they have to do the basics really well. So you have to rest and repair. You have to eat things that honor your body in the forms of energy. You have to then look at things that are going to increase adaptability in the body. So exercise, different types of exercise, cold therapy, rest. Like, I mean, you just really have to get back to what we call as the 5 foundations of health. And you have to do that really well before you can go jump to, hey, my testosterone's low, or my cycle is messed up, or I want to have another baby. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The human is the human. And so you have to go back to the basics, build the foundation, and then demand the body to be more specific after you've paid attention to those foundations.
Awesome.
So glucose stability is one of those foundations. Like, you have literally, this is so cool. So for your liver to detoxify, it has to have stable glucose.
Oh.
So if you're eating anything that's sugar-based, that is artificial sweetener, like, it cannot detoxify. That's how freaking awesome. Because think about it, like, ancestral human would never have access to a Slurpee. So when you have a massive amount of insulin and a massive amount of glucose in your body, it's like, it's thinking, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't understand that. And so it literally cannot detoxify. Your liver's ability to eliminate that first phase of detoxification, which we have 3, it cannot get past that first phase of detoxification. Isn't that cool?
That is super cool.
It's terrifying, but really cool at the same time.
Which is also, and I probably need to do a whole separate blog post on this, but that's part of the reason, I'm assuming, why you like people to do their 2 45-day cleanses a year, because you do want their body to be able to fully detoxify.
You're essentially hitting a reset button on those 45 days.
Yeah.
It's like getting your body back to like as close to, there, you can always go overboard or underboard with it, but as close to that ancestral reset as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me. Yep. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
If y'all think I'm a little crazy, just wait till my favorite guest joins me in the Marriage Corner. It's my hubby, Eric. Yay! Welcome back to Eric Brown, my favorite person to have on the podcast. Eric, how's your day going?
We back.
That's right. Back in Black. Name that movie.
Men in Black.
Thank you. Normally, I don't have this kind of quote to be able to do, and Eric is really good at movie quotes, so I'm pretty excited that I got to say that for once.
I do want to do a segment on movies that I can't believe my wife hasn't seen.
Great idea.
So, and then discuss that and all the questions. So, for example, you had not seen the original Top Gun movie, and I think it would be funny and interesting to hear your thoughts on that. But that's for another episode, I think.
I love it. I did like it, though. I was like, why haven't I seen this? But anyway, we'll definitely have to bring that back. So, Eric, in my interview today, I talked to Dr. John. And, you know, one of the things that that I also do because of Dr. John is cold water immersion therapy. But you actually beat me to the punch on that. So why don't you tell everybody the first thought that entered your head when you tried cold water immersion therapy? Oh, and tell what it is in case anybody didn't know.
So that is true. I was way ahead of the game as far as cold water immersion therapy is concerned. That's actually not true. But
in our family, you were.
In our family, I was. That's true. So I initially heard about cold water immersion therapy at the gym that I go to, which is Spartan Fitness. And they have a lot of MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. I mainly do the strength and conditioning, but the head trainer there, his name is Kenneth. He was a big proponent of cold water immersion therapy. And he said, Eric, you should come to my house one time and try it out. And I was like, oh, great. I had seen some Instagram stories of people doing this cold water immersion therapy at his house. And I thought I'd give this a try. So one day he said, Eric, just come to my house. Here's the address. Bring 5 bags of ice. And I was like, sure.
Okay.
No problem. Well, I get there and he has a trash can, one of the big plastic ones. I think they're all pretty much the same.
Oh, yeah.
In the middle of his driveway.
Not a small one, the extra large you put on the curb.
And he said, you got the ice? I said, yes, sir. He said, dump it in. And so I dump it in there. I think there was already about 10 bags of ice in here as well, too.
Oh.
And I said, so how long are we going? I call him KD. I said, so how long are we going to do this? He said, if you can last 13 minutes, I will be very impressed. And I was like, okay.
Dad gum.
So I think you go a little bit shorter than that. Is that correct?
Yes. Dr. John told me he'd be happy if I even went 2 or 3 minutes the first time. And you quadrupled that? I'm bad at math. Yikes.
Yes. So we start, and you have to remember, growing up doing swim team up in Indiana, not always a heated pool in the morning, a little bit used to cold water. Also, too, KD had sold me on the idea of the recovery process and all the benefits of the cold water immersion therapy. So I just said, I'm going to do this. And it really is mind over matter, essentially. And just hopped right in there and got up to my neck. And the initial shock is the worst, obviously.
Yes.
But then I would say after about the first minute and a half, your body gets used to it. And then I would say for the next 10 minutes, I was okay. It was very cold. But at about the 11th minute, my whole body started to shake and was able to get out and did the full 13 minutes. And my body was very, very stiff afterwards. And it was tough getting out of the trash can as well, too.
Yeah.
It was a small stepping stool. That was very kind of KD.
Such a giver.
Such a giver. So I definitely think there are a lot of benefits. Being a nurse practitioner, cardiovascular health, I definitely think there is something to be said for releasing endorphins. What happens with the cold water immersion therapy, I know you discussed with Dr. John about this, is that it increases circulation. And when you get that cold water on your body naturally wants to regulate itself and basically warm your core. So all your blood from your extremities will go to your core. And when I got out, my whole chest and torso was extremely red. And that was the actual blood coming from, my arms and my legs and my toes. And it was all trying to warm up my core. And then, after about a half hour, everything was back to normal. But yeah, I really think there is something to be said. It really kind of resets your system, kind of that fight or flight, and releases all these different hormones and chemicals. And like I said, just for circulation, I think there's a lot of benefits to it.
Absolutely. And I know, Eric, one of the biggest things that you told me that you like about it, since I have been doing it now, I've probably done it about 6 to 7 times, and same experience as Eric. I'm like super bright red all over my body when I do it. I think the most I've done it is 10 minutes. So Eric still is holding the record in the Brown family. But it is mind blowing to me, the sleep you get from it. Like your sleep is so much better. There's all kinds of research about like the brown. Do you know much about the brown fat?
Adipose tissue.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool because specifically I've read that in women, it can help you burn stubborn types of fat, which is super cool. And Dr. John's recommendation is that you should aim to get about 11 minutes of cold water immersion therapy a week. It doesn't have to be all at once, like Eric, unless you want to be a real trooper. You can actually break it up over the week. So yeah, major props to you on that. But Eric also...
So I guess the question I'm going to ask you is, when are we going to invest in another trash can so we can have our own cold water immersion therapy?
Great question, Eric.
I'll be sure to clean out the trash can for you.
I think I'll probably go with just the cool Dr. John kind. He uses blue cube baths, for anybody that's wondering.
So fancy.
Very bougie, Dr. John. He's in Homewood, so you know. Okay, so Eric, we have talked about over and over again with our friends, our family, you and I, about how unique of questions you come up with. So one thing that I would really love to start bringing into the Marriage Corner is a unique Eric question of the day. And Eric's family is really intentional about their questions, usually at the dinner table or whatever the case may be. And that's something that I just love about you. So I'm going to ask Eric, if the listeners are cool with it, to come up with a cool question each episode. So Eric, do you have anything for me that's random today you could shoot off?
So the first thing I want to say is that I do love the name that you gave this segment, which is the Marriage Corner, because I want people to realize we're actually sitting in a corner of your office as we record this.
It's a tight area. It's lots of love in here.
Not only is there the physical aspect of the Marriage Corner, but, most people that are in a relationship or in a marriage, sometimes they feel like they can be put in a corner, like...
Don't put baby in a corner. Second movie reference. Yes.
Do you know which movie that is?
The dancing movie from the 80s. Yeah. Hang on, that's going to come to me. Dirty Dancing.
All right.
Yes, score.
Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my gosh. So, one of my sister's all-time favorite movies. But anyways, maybe we'll add that to the list of movies we need to see. But so anyways, I want people to realize we are actually in a corner as we're recording the Marriage Corner.
Yes, facts.
All right. So, kind of going along with the whole health subject, the whole health premise, the random question that I have for you today is, give me your top 3 exercises or health clothes that possibly turn you on. So it can either be an exercise or, some kind of apparel, maybe eyewear, or just, you can take that however you want it. So, you can start at, doesn't have to be in any particular order, but what would you say?
Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is, man, I love Eric's, and I tell him this often. I love his back and shoulders and upper body muscles. Like, I really think that you do a good job of like working on those hard at your gym, like we were talking about. And so whenever you have on a swimsuit, I'm like, yeah, he looks good.
Yep. Definitely one of my top 10 qualities. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I feel so shallow talking about this, but I love it.
A lot of pull-ups.
A lot of pull-ups. That's the secret, ladies and gentlemen. Number 2, I would say, is I love you in a golf outfit. Like your fitted golf shirts, and you wear that blue, and it typically makes your blue eyes pop. And then you wear like the good-looking golf shorts. It's a good look for you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Do you want me to give you one, or do you want to go through all 3 of yours first?
Oh, no, you go. Hit me with one.
No, you do all your 3 first.
Okay, cool. And then the third thing that I would say is probably, I mean, you know that I love abs. I love some strong ab muscles. So I feel like you got to work hard to get those, and yours are pretty great. So
the abs are tough. That is true.
Yeah.
It's a lot of diet if you want to see those abs.
True. The abs are made in the kitchen.
So that's very, very true. But all right, those are pretty good answers.
Are you happy with those?
You mentioned the golf clothes. Yeah, those are good.
Okay, great.
You do make a lot of comments when I come home from sometimes playing golf.
Yeah, you look handsome, babe.
I've got that like glistening sweat from being out in the summer heat.
Right.
So I'll usually unbutton at least one button for you, just,
Oh, Lord.
So
sometimes he's got that sunburn working. I had to comment on that too. Babe, where's your sunscreen?
That's true. I do need to wear more sunscreen. All right, are you ready for my top 3?
So ready. Bring
top 3 exercises or health clothes that turn me on.
Okay, let's hear it. I'm scared.
So I think you can probably guess number 1, and I've said this at the very beginning, and it is true, but it kind of started off in our relationship as kind of a safe answer, because I remember when we were first dating, you kind of asked me a similar question. It sounds like a vain question, but it was more of just a fun question. It was, Eric, what body part do you find most attractive on me? We
were also in college. We were young.
We were in college, and like you could say, obviously, boobs, maybe butt, things of that nature. But when you're first dating, you don't want to come off, that's kind of your typical guy answer. So I was like, what is something that I can say that is not offensive, but can maybe still be construed as a compliment? And so I went with the tricep muscle.
Boom. Work those arms, baby.
So I do find that little tricep muscle, if it's popping out a little bit, very, very attractive.
And why did you tell me that you thought it was so attractive? Do you remember?
I think I kind of explained that. It was a safe answer.
Well, that was at number 1. But what you told me then was that you felt like it showed that somebody was really putting in the effort to work out if you would define that small of a muscle.
That was a good answer that I remembered back then.
It was. 21-year-old Eric, sharp. Sharp as a tack.
So yeah, tricep, lots of dips.
Did those today at the gym, actually. You're welcome.
It's a great exercise. All right, now number 2, transitioning to workout attire.
Okay.
So this is kind of general, but really anything Lululemon.
Not the leggings specifically.
No, actually specifically the leggings.
Okay, got it.
So I'm not sure how old Lululemon is now, but I feel like they've been around for maybe at least 20 years. And the way they have totally just shifted the whole entire mindset of, casual athletic wear, where, now it's just anywhere you go, Lululemon pants there, Lululemon top there. I'm not complaining. I'll put it that way. So
I hear ya.
You make the Lululemon pants look good. I'll give you that.
So are you telling me I have more budget to shop for Lululemon now these days? Can I add that in?
You can get as much Lululemon as you want.
Hey, wow. I'm like, Lululemon needs to sponsor this episode. Hey.
Oh, that's right. No free advertising.
That's right.
All right. And number 3. So this one is, you might have to explain a little bit about this.
Oh, Lord.
Number 3, attractive, the exercise back dancing.
Oh my gosh. Taking it to the Pure Barre days.
So for anyone that doesn't know what back dancing is, I don't know if I can describe this without, maybe getting an X rating on this podcast, but
please try.
Just very, very quick story. Heather was a Pure Barre instructor, and at the very beginning, I would go to a couple of Pure Barre classes. They would have guys classes every once in a while. And so I would go just kind of see what it was about. And one of
very supportive husband.
Very, very supportive, very supportive. One of the exercises was called back dancing. And basically in Pure Barre, you have 2 rows of people and they're all kind of looking towards the middle. And with back dancing, you're kind of just like in a seated kind of position. And basically you're doing a hip thrust in the air.
Okay. Yeah. Facts. So, it's a glute bridge.
Yeah, kind of like that. But anyways, there's nothing more awkward than being in a Pure Barre doing hip thrusts. You just cannot look at anybody in the eye while you're doing a hip thrust.
That is very true. You avoid eye contact at all consequences.
But having said that, it's a fairly attractive exercise maneuver, I will say. Lots of benefits, I hear.
Oh my gosh, it is great for your butt. So anybody looking to tone up your booty, Pure Barre is awesome for that. So there you have it.
Yeah, those are my top 3 exercises / health clothes that I find attractive.
Okay. Well, that's a really good answer. And per usual, great question, Eric. So thanks for bringing that into the show.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining me again, Eric. We'll see you back next episode. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not followed at Healthy with Heather Brown yet on Instagram, go give me a follow over there and we will chat with you next time. See ya. Oh, hey there. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to take a screenshot of your podcast app on your phone, post it to your Instagram stories, and tag me at Healthy with Heather Brown to let me know your favorite takeaway from this episode.